Megan Draper, co-founder and CEO of Furniture Reuse Solutions.
I was raised on a small farm in New Hampshire, USA. My mom would shop at secondhand stores, thrift stores, and I got picked on a lot as a kid because of that. But as an adult and the life that I lead now, I have a deeper appreciation for everything that I have. It really taught me some fundamental lessons about life. It was Christmas Eve. It was snowing like crazy outside, and I was working behind the counter at a gas station. I had a regular customer, and I was running like crazy. The pumps were down. This regular customer finally got up to the counter. He looks at me and says, "You want a job?" So I worked for that company for, up until I founded FRS 5 years ago. My industry is very male dominated, very hardcore. You're controlling, or you're bold, or like, seriously? It's soul crushing when individuals tell you that, but there are times there needs to be humble pie. I'm actively advocating for humanitarian organizations that really want to make a difference in the lives of children. I've been able to find a niche. We've seen containers that have shipped to the Middle East, and they video it as the children go into the classrooms. We're talking refugees that their homes have been bombed. Sustainability and being a societal entrepreneur and realizing that what FRS started out doing now has much wider, broader impact than I personally ever thought possible.
Hey, I'm Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. And today we've got another female entrepreneur, because I am speaking with Megan Draper in Carlsbad in California as we continue to spread our reach across the globe. Megan's story struck a chord with me. She's someone who comes from humble beginnings, and you won't mind me saying that, Megan, I'm sure. And a chance encounter sparked her journey into the world of sustainability and social impact. And 10 years later, she's now the co-founder and CEO of Furniture Reuse Solutions, which is a 100% female-owned environmental company making waves in that industry. Megan is a passionate advocate of recycling, and her business is proof that doing good for the planet can go hand in hand with creating real social value. Under her leadership, Furniture Reuse Solution has redirected more than £60 million of donated furniture to over 200 charities and non-profits around the world. And in so doing, has offset between 60 to 90,000 metric tonnes of CO2, which actually equates to taking about 30 to 20,000 cars off the road for a year. So that's serious impact on the planet. So let's dive into how Megan has built something so impactful and what drives her. Megan Draper, welcome to the Power of Women podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Megan, let's start at the beginning. What were those humble beginnings like, and how have they shaped your values today?
I was raised on a small farm in New Hampshire, USA, and we would raise our food. We had a pig farm, and we didn't have a lot of money growing up. My mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mother of 4 kids. My father was on the road a lot, wasn't home very often. And going to school, we didn't have the newest clothes, didn't have the newest shoes, nothing to that effect. My mom would shop at secondhand stores, thrift stores, and I got picked on a lot as a kid because of that. But as an adult and the life that I lead now, I have a deeper appreciation for everything that I have. It really taught me some fundamental lessons about life that have carried over to today.
And you mentioned that a chance encounter led you down the path of sustainability and social impact. What was that moment?
It was Christmas Eve. It was snowing like crazy outside, and I was working behind the counter at a gas station, and I had a regular customer that I waited on every week for about 18 months, and I was running like crazy. The pumps were down, trying to run credit cards by hand, trying to get everybody out because everybody wants to go spend Christmas with their families. And this regular customer finally got up to the counter, and I'm scrambling trying to get him on his way, and lo and behold, he looks at me and says, "You want a job?" And I'm like, "Really? You're asking me now?" And he said, "Yeah."
Of all times.
Of all times. I'm like, this is very bizarre. This is weird. And I knew that working at a gas station was not ultimately what I wanted to do with my life. And so next time he came in, I asked him, I said, "Were you serious about offering me a job?" And he said, "Yeah, you have phenomenal customer service." And he said, "I really feel you could be a good fit for my company." So he gave me his business card. I did some research, and turned out the company he was affiliated with really struck a chord for my principles and what I wanted to do with my life. And it was a firm that dealt with recycling and trying to create, make a small dent as they could for environmental services with colleges in the New England region. And I said, I could see myself doing this. I could stand for this. And it took about 2 years. They didn't have an immediate opening for me. I interviewed 3 times for the company. And each time they hired somebody else, but I said, I'm not going to give up. I really want to work for this company. And I decided to go to night school to get my associates in business. So during that time when I was doing my business courses on management, I took every opportunity I could to interview him and learn more about the company. So the next time there was an opportunity within the organization, I had one leg up over the competition. So it came out of thin air, yes.
So that job offer wasn't a guaranteed job. You still had to go through the recruitment process to get in, yeah?
Yes. Yes, I did.
So how has that experience become the origin story for Furniture Reuse Solutions that you now own and run today?
So I worked for that company for, up until I founded FRS 5 years ago, coming up this June. I started low in the organization. I was doing telemarketing phone calls to begin, and worked my way up as a coordinator, and slowly but surely more leadership responsibilities were given to me. And I relocated to San Francisco, California, coming up on 7 years ago now. It taught me a lot of the leadership and management skills that I've had the ability over the past 5 years to help shape me as a leader, and also to better work with my team to provide direction to make a difference.
So starting a 100% female-owned environmental platform is no easy feat. What were the challenges that you encountered along the way, Megan?
One was I started the company with my husband. My husband and I... Actually, I married the person who gave me the job. Actually, okay, I'll call a spade a spade. So when FRS was founded during COVID, the hard hurdle was for our clients to know that the leadership had shifted, and that it was me now that was going to begin taking more of a role in running the company, and my husband less so. And so my industry is very male dominated, very hardcore. Women have their place, men, are out there earning the money, and women they have their place, and that's that. So there was a lot that my husband went through on his side, trying to deal with people he'd worked with his entire life, saying, my wife runs the show. This is her company. This is what she does. And me on the flip side, to gain people's respect that even though things had changed, there was no difference really in how things were being run. If anything, we were better, because it was just him and I, and we weren't reporting to anybody else. It was actually a much stronger partnership because of that.
But difficult with passing the baton to ensure that the confidence was in the new leadership.
Yes, very much so. My husband has been in this line of work for coming up on 30 years now. So there was that transition to long-standing clients that he knew, and now as time has gone on, it's not there as much as it used to be, because there's been so much shift since COVID, with different people taking, different people coming into play, others retiring or getting out of that line of work, going somewhere else. So it's still been challenging to kind of break through that and say, our relationship is great. Things are awesome. There's nothing going on behind the scenes. This is from a professional side. I'm running the company, and it's no reflection on my husband that he's allowing me, or I shouldn't even say allowing, because that's the old school,
exactly.
Right? That we are very active, and he supports me 100% in my endeavors.
So you mentioned COVID changed things, and it did, because there was certainly a prevalence of female entrepreneurs that have burst onto the scene since that time. Any in your industry?
Yes, a lot. I saw an influx of women that were struggling to find ways to make ends meet. And so they found a niche. I have a couple of close friends, actually, that broke out and started their own companies during COVID. And I just marveled at watching their ability to multitask, because they took a situation that most people would be completely daunted by, and that's, I have my kids at home all day. Like, I have no escape now. I have no break. And they took that and said, okay, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to start a business, and it is going to be home-based. And by the way, I'm going to homeschool my kids, and I'm going to take care of my family, and I'm going to do all of these things. And I am amazed of what they've been able to accomplish. But like us, COVID helped them, because if it was a traditional startup, you would expect they have to go to the office every day, they have to pay for their overhead, they have all of these things that you would expect a traditional company to have. But since everybody was sheltering in place and all of that went away, there was no stigma attached to, well, she's running a business out of her office, like out of her home. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Who would have thought something positive could have come out of that? Yeah.
Exactly. So when COVID lifted and things got back to normal, then they were ready in their growth and their business plan to get to that point to say, okay, now we're gonna open an office and take it to the next step.
I was talking with a public relations expert in Australia only the other day, and working from home is, or has been, a hot political issue leading into our most recent federal election. Is working from home still an issue? Clearly, with new leadership in the US, it's becoming a mandated issue. What's your feel on that?
I have remote workers, and I also have in-office workers. Remote staff are beneficial for me because we are a national organization. We work in all states. So the ability to call on somebody to say, I need you to have a face-to-face meeting with a client in your state, in your hometown, or a short drive away is critical for me. And on the flip side, it's also important to have individuals that can be in an office environment, because the ability to read body language and facial expressions and brainstorm and be around a table and feel as part of a team is equally critical. So for me, it's 50-50. There are definite benefits. There are also some drawbacks, but overall, I would say the ability to do both has enabled us to grow our business because we're looking at it more than just a traditional business environment. We're looking at different avenues and different ways that we can utilize people's experiences, that they don't have to be local. They don't have to be here in San Diego. They can be in Seattle, Washington. They can be in Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
They can be in
Solves
Austin,
a talent issue, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And frankly, the perspective, because based on where you live, and I know you know this in Australia too, different areas of the country go through different experiences, or they're dealing with different pressures than, say, if everybody was just all central and localized in one area.
Well, coming up, let's talk more about the impact what you're doing is having on the planet and for those in need. If you're loving the Power of Women podcast, be sure to jump onto our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. So, Megan, you were named Furniture Sustainability CEO of the Year in 2023, which is a recognition that speaks volumes to the impact FRS has made under your leadership. How much of your success would you say comes from your business acumen, and how much comes from your personal values and upbringing?
You need to have both. You need to have both. I say that because if you don't have the passion and the drive, then you can be as intelligent and as smart as the next person. People need to have the ability to relate to you as a person. And if you have something that's near and dear to your heart and it means a lot to you, and you wake up in the morning and it could be an off day or something really challenging happens at work, and you take a step back and you say, I don't want to do this anymore. This is exhausting. It's just, I could be doing so many other things with my life right now. And then you step back and you sit in your chair for a second and you read a feedback report, or you see a video of a child that has received furniture that's never had it in their life up until then. Or now that I'm old enough, actually meet somebody that you helped when they were a young child, and they come up and they shake your hand and say, thank you for giving me a good start. Now I'm in college. I'm actually old enough now that that's happening.
That's daunting.
It is daunting. But those are the stories that you remember. It is, I've had a couple of people that I've worked with that over time, for one reason or another, say, you're a taker, or you're controlling, or you're bold, or wow, you got some gumption here. Like, seriously? Like, what makes you think that you have the right to be this way? And it's soul crushing when individuals tell you that. But I take a step back and understand that, there are times there needs to be humble pie, because we're not perfect, and there are constant things in our personalities that we need to work on. But then the heart gets involved, right? And you say, I'm taking control. I will take. I will be these facets of my personality will come out because I'm fighting for something bigger than myself. I'm not just fighting to put food on the table or to get through an 8-to-5 job. I'm actively advocating for humanitarian organizations that really want to make a difference in the lives of children. And I've been able to find a niche, something I'm really good at, utilizing my logistics background to do that. So if that means that I'm dealing with somebody who looks at me and says, you have no business being here. You're a woman. What benefit do you think you could possibly bring to the table, and tell me you're going to teach me something that I don't know? Like, you really think that I don't already know what it is that you're going to tell me needs to be done? To somebody that looks at you and says, okay, I get it. This is my budget. It's a very, very fiscal. It's very tight. What kind of plan can you give me? Because I can't exceed this. Can you work with me and try and figure this out? So I want to do the right thing, but I also know that I don't have thousands upon thousands of dollars to do the right thing. So how can you help me do the right thing? That's where you have to have that balancing act. You need the book smarts for sure. Like, you need to know your business. You need to know the ins and outs to ensure that you're not going out and leading fully with your heart, that you're going to a district and saying, oh, sure, yeah, I'll give you a freebie. And the next thing you know, the landlord's knocking on the door saying, yeah, your rent's late. Like, when can I anticipate being paid? Because you're trying to do the right thing. So it's a very fine balance between the two.
Yeah. So, of the work that you do, is there a couple of stories you can share where FRS has actually made the difference in the lives of some kids?
My husband and I, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, went to Managua, Nicaragua in particular. And we were there to see a few container loads or a few shipments of brand new school furniture be delivered and distributed. We got into the back of a couple of four-wheel drive pickup trucks. And man, I thought dirt roads were bad in the United States. Holy cow. You know what I was like? I was sitting there like holding on to the armrests and seatbelts, and it's just like, this isn't even a road. This is like a rut. Like, how do you guys get up here every day? And, we went up and they took us to a school that was waiting for furniture. And we went in and it was basically a hut. It was like a mud hut with a thatch roof, open. There were no windows. There was no door. Probably about 15, 20 kids. Dirt floor. Chalkboard even. A green old chalkboard with like wooden, like even the base where the chalk was held was wood. So, I mean, you're talking old school with those. And the desks, from my experience, probably came from the 20s. And there was barely anything left of them. Some of them, the tablets, like the wooden tablets, were completely gone. Others, there were holes in the seat. It was deplorable. You had children that didn't have any shoes on. You could tell that their clothing was very worn. And you could tell that they were malnourished. And then they took us from that school, and they said they wanted to show us that these were the people that were still in need of assistance, that still needed help. They wanted in our minds to, when we went back to the States, to say, these are the people we're looking for you to help. So obviously I can still relay it crystal clear, like I'm still there 7 years later. So it definitely did what it needed to do. It created an impact. And then they took us to a school that had just received the furniture. And they were smiling, they were happy, they were all bubbly. They were just like, hi, how are you? Of course, they're saying it in Spanish, but they just wanted to come up and they wanted to hug us. And the teachers were saying, no. Like, you need to be respectful. You need to stay in your seats, like, until, you can tell them how thankful you are for the furniture. And it was just such a stark contrast between the two. And in that case, granted, the furniture was brand new. It was somebody that we were working with that was purging a warehouse, and they were trying to get rid of a lot of furniture that they didn't want to see stay in the States. And they said it's brand new. So, if you can find a home for it, this is great. But it didn't even matter if it was there. We've seen videos of, for FRS, we've seen containers that have shipped to the Middle East. And they video it as the children go into the classrooms. We're talking refugees that their homes have been bombed. They have nowhere to go home to. And these humanitarian organizations are working to ensure that children's educational development is not stunted because of circumstances outside of their control. So children that are scared and terrified, living in tents with their parents, wondering where their next meal is going to come from, and just looking to their parents to say, are we okay? Are we safe? Are still having the opportunity to walk into these classrooms and say, oh, I still get to learn? And it keeps the kids, for a short period of time away from what's going on outside those doors.
The impact of a chair and a desk.
Yes, and it was something I didn't expect, because Nicaragua was completely different. It's these are people that have nothing. But then you go to the Middle East, and these are situations where these families had a life, and they were doing great. And then they lost their homes, and they lost everything, and they had to flee. And now humanitarian organizations are stepping in and saying, let's try and give you the best feeling of normalcy that we can here. Here's a classroom. And the kids walk in and they're like, yes, this piece of normalcy. Like, this is something that they can relate to. And so when I started FRS, I was more of the Nicaragua mentality. Provide every student a desk and a chair. And as FRS started to evolve, it became more and more about the individual. What does the individual need?
Because circumstances can change.
They do. And it's also within the United States, so abroad and within the U.S. So the U.S., the domestic programs here, we worked with Adult Teen Challenge, which they have a branch in Canada as well, is all focused on addiction, rehabilitation, drugs and alcohol in particular. And as we know, during COVID, that skyrocketed off the charts, where there were a lot of individuals who needed help. So again, it becomes about the person. So what the Adult and Teen Challenge organization did was they opened up a bunch of thrift stores in the Pacific Northwest, in particular, that my experience was. And what they did was the sales of the furniture, by opening that thrift store, went into their program for addiction, to help support individuals that wanted help, but couldn't necessarily afford to go to a traditional rehabilitation clinic for 30 days or something like that. So they were still getting assistance, and they were still getting help. And the same with Habitat for Humanity resource. They were doing the same thing. They were taking the furniture that their locale could sell, because every restore is different in what they can move based on their communities, doing the same thing. The sales, the proceeds from those sales were going into a fund to help build a house for somebody within the community that had never had one or couldn't afford a home on their own, especially.
So the impact is wide-reaching from the sales of this recycled furniture.
It is very far-reaching. So it's you look at it from a sustainability and being a societal entrepreneur, and realizing that what FRS started out doing now has much wider, broader impact than I personally ever thought possible.
Yeah. So that's interesting. How much of when you started out did you think was about the planet versus how much was going to be about impacting the lives of those in need?
I mean, I've always been environmentally minded. Growing up as a kid, we talked about my humble beginnings. And so to go back to that for a minute, my father actually had a lot of different businesses, but one that I remember most was he was a logger. And I remember being a little kid in the cab next to him, and he'd be going to the mills with, hauling wood pulp. But at the same time, going back to the forest, what was happening is he was also delivering wood chips to local power plants. And the power plants had special scrubbers on them that allowed the power plants to burn the wood chips for fuel, so they didn't have to use coal. So it was a situation or a scenario from sustainability at a young age that I was watching. Not only were the loggers, it kind of drove my dad nuts, but like between February and April every year, New Hampshire would shut down all the logging operations. And they did it because of the wetlands. That was the period of time during the year where it would, like, the snow would start to melt. And because the heavy equipment is going out in the middle of the woods, it was very easy to destroy the brooks, water infrastructure, things like that animal life like beavers and fish relied on. Like, they just needed to be left alone until the ground could firm up and dry up, and then they would come back and say, the New Hampshire Fish and Game would say, okay, you guys are good. It's mud season is over. And
you're absorbing all of this as a kid. Yeah.
I was. So it drove my dad nuts that he couldn't work for 6 weeks. Of course, he over time learned to adjust to that. But the loggers too were, again, they were taking the pulp to the lumber yard. The whatever couldn't go to the lumber yard, they were chipping to go to the power plants. But then above that, they were also required to plant trees in its stead. If they weren't clearing the property for building a home or whatever, they were required to do that so that they weren't stripping the land of its natural resource, that they were ensuring that, in 20, 25 years, there were healthy trees that were growing back.
Their own circular economy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was, it's just, I'm looking back at those instances or those experiences in my life. I now look and say, how much of it is trying to make a difference in the lives of others, and how much of it is creating sustainability for the next generation. And they're very deeply entwined now. It started off as believing in something bigger than myself and saying, if I ever had kids, will my children have a future? Can I be doing something that will help minimize the carbon footprint? So if I do have kids, will they be able to breathe in 20 years? Granted, that's an extreme case, but just saying. And then slowly but surely, I got more involved in the impact we were creating by connecting with the people we were helping. And the more that I connect with the people we help, the more I'm becoming emboldened in what it is that I'm doing, reaching out to people and saying, yeah, I'm a woman. Yeah, I have a husband. Yeah, he knows what I'm doing. He supports me. But this is me. You're dealing with me. And I'm trying to do something, and because it's greater than myself, it's greater than my team, and all of us have the heart. So regardless of what happens during the day, we're going home to our families and saying, you know what, I could have worked for a trucking company. I could have worked as a cashier at a gas station or a bank teller. But even on my worst day, when trucks don't show up and things just are not going right, I'm like, I go home and I say, you know what? I had containers that went to Nicaragua, Tanzania, Malawi, and Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Jamaica, the Philippines.
It's one hell of a supply chain.
And how can you not go home feeling like, regardless of how crappy your day was, to say, you know what? I actually had a pretty good day. I had a pretty good day.
Megan, through the lens of Power of Women, I've got one final question for you today on the podcast. What is a phrase that defines you?
Choose your hard. And I say that because I have gone through, like most of us, some pretty strong hardships in my life, pretty young in my life, that have made me resolute in who I am today. And having gone through those experiences, I know one way or the other, my life could have been completely different. For one reason or another, I could have gone and done something completely contrary to what it is that I'm doing now. And I realized early on when I was struggling and I felt broken and was saying, there's no way I'm going to do this, because I was raised to believe that women were subservient to men. Like, women did not stand up on their own. They stayed at home. They took care of the family. They minded their manners. They kept their mouth shut, to be quite frank about it. And so everything that I'm doing, to a certain extent, goes completely against that. The one difference, and that's why sometimes there's complications in my professional life when people know I'm married, to say, you sure your husband knows what you're doing? Yes, I have the full support of my husband. Yes, he knows what I do. But it comes back to, it's not that we feel growing up as kids that we have a silver spoon in our mouth, or that, we're entitled to the life that we have. But when you look at people who live in third world countries, we really do have the best. We're not living on $1 a day. We're not wondering where our food comes from. Yes. Do we have our own set of economic challenges? Absolutely we do. But if we go into life with the mindset that the world doesn't owe us anything, like it really doesn't owe us anything, and we find out the hardest thing, to figure out is who we are and what we want to do with the rest of our life. And if people are fortunate enough, I was one of the lucky ones to figure out young at 24 what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. To know that regardless of what path you choose in life, it is going to be hard. It's just more at the end of the day, what benefits are you looking to reap from those decisions or those choices? And that really has been a guiding light for me. Was it easy to hear a vendor partner tell me last week that I'm controlling and I'm bold? It wasn't, because I immediately went back to a little kid being conditioned the way that I was to say, I'm doing something wrong. Oh no, I'm not supposed to be that way. Like that's pride, that's being haughty, that's being arrogant. Like, you're not supposed to be that way. And then I took a step back and said, whoa, wait a minute. Like, hear what he said, interpret it, and take it into context. Maybe temper yourself a little bit here, but you are a CEO and you are a leader. You need to control your company. You need to give direction, clear and concise direction about what it is that you want to accomplish. You need to be driven, and you've got to be bold, because people aren't expecting you to be bold. Like, they're expecting you to go down a very different path than one that, quite frankly, I feel in a lot of ways is uncharted. I have so much respect for women that are entrepreneurs and who have their own companies, who have their own businesses, and understanding how they are shattering glass ceilings in so many ways. Doesn't mean that it's not. We have our own unique set of challenges, for sure. It is so hard to balance a personal life and a professional life. It really is. But we also have the ability, because we can multitask, as long as we are careful about our boundaries and we are in tune with ourselves. So when we start to feel the burnout, I was watching another one of your podcasts about a young woman that was talking about, burnout and how she was going through that experience. It really resonated with me to say, oh, hey, that's me. Like, whoa, okay, I'm gonna listen a little bit more here, because this is relevant here to what it is that I'm going through. And something just as much as having that type of podcast, but it comes from another woman. From that experience. It's not like I can't talk to other male colleagues or other friends or whatever, but it's a very unique dynamic to talk to women who are facing the same challenges, the same stresses, the same difficulties, the same triggers, if you will, the same stigmas, to kick back one day and just say, how did you deal with it? Like, how did you deal with these guys coming up and saying, you have no right to tell me what to do? Like, I'm not going to listen to you. How did you break through that and get them to respect you without necessarily having to sacrifice your principles and still be able to take a stand for yourself and for your company? Like, how did you navigate that? I try to have those conversations with my husband at times, and rightfully he says, Megan, I never had that problem. I'm not really one to talk to about. So when it comes back to that, the question that you had asked about choose your hard, it's also ultimately coming down to say, what is the end result of what you're looking to gain, to derive through the experience? Because whether you make the right decision or the wrong one, you're still going to have some impact. Sometimes even making the wrong decision can be hard. Sometimes making the right decision can be hard. So keeping that mental toughness, in those scenarios, in those situations, to say, regardless of whatever it is, if I already have it in my head to say, if it matters, if it means something, and it's in my heart, it's going to be hard, so don't go into it thinking it's going to be easy.
And similarly to you taking inspiration from hearing somebody else's journey of burnout, somebody else listening to this podcast is going to take inspiration out of you elevating yourself out of circumstances that could have looked very different based on your upbringing, and being able to have both a professional and social and sustainable impact in what you're doing is fantastic and in many ways profound. So congratulations, Megan.
Thank you.
It's a great story, and I look forward to hearing and sharing the feedback that comes from this particular episode of Power of Women. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. And FRS, if anybody, if you have a call to action of what you need from the community, what does FRS need more of? Do you need more furniture?
We need more furniture, yes, for sure. And we also need support for the humanitarian organizations that we support. Unfortunately, right now, the way the political climate is going, there's been a lot of cuts. I'm sure people have heard through USAID and other critical programs that make a profound difference in people overseas. So organizations, just to name one, World Vision, which is global. I know that there's a branch in Australia.
There is.
They're trying really hard to grapple with cut funding. And because of that, unfortunately, the people that they work so hard to help are ultimately the ones that are being hurt the most. And so anything that we as humans can do to support organizations, obviously do the due diligence. They always say that around Christmas time or around Giving Tuesday, things of that, to ensure that those organizations are true, that you're really giving support to those that are putting the money toward the programs, right? And not padding somebody's pocket. I hold true to that. But overall, from understanding with corporations and clients, yes, furniture is needed, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. These organizations, they band together, they they partner together. Each nonprofit organization has a specialty. One may be clean water, another may be medicine, another food. And so what we do is we help to provide the furniture, but again, utilizing that as the example, it's one piece. So I think of right now what's going on in Gaza, and again, I'll bring focus back to the Middle East. Can they use furniture? Yes, but you have people that are living in tents. So for them, it may be more important, if they don't have stable housing, to say they're in the natural elements, so they're at risk for health issues, and they're also trying to ensure that they have food on the table. So yes, what it is that I do is important in helping children, to help people. We ship dorm furniture. So in those issues, like in that instance with using refugees as the example, we can provide bed frames and mattresses to keep families off the ground and warm, and bedding and clothing and things of that nature. But I would say it's not necessarily supporting what FRS does for furniture. It's supporting the bigger picture of understanding the totality of what it is that humanitarian organizations truly provide to humankind.
Megan, thank you again. Thank you for that important message. And we look forward to sharing this episode on the socials. And please be sure to pass this on to somebody else who you think might gain benefit from hearing Megan's story. Until next time.